down into our feature match between Ben Ungar and Fletcher Johnson. This is going to be Izzet Phoenix against the Lotus Field combo deck. Now, typically, Dom, this is a matchup that very, very heavily favors the Lotus Field deck. And looking at these deck lists, I don't think much is going to change here.
Yeah, this is the ideal pairing if you're on Lotus Field, and really the only hope from the Phoenix side is if you have a main deck spell pierce or two, can you tag a Sylvan Scrying or some key piece on the combo turn? That's not a great plan, and Ben has a single spell pierce to even try and pursue that remote dreamer. So unless he has a really powerful start here in game one, which does not look like it's on the table yet, you have to like Fletcher's odds in this game, and then post sideboard, the Phoenix deck picks up some more counter spells, some more interaction, can at least make a game of it. But yeah, game one, typically a bloodbath in favor of the Lotus Field deck, and that's a big reason to play the Lotus Field deck. Is when Phoenix is popular, this is the go-to response to that.
Right, exactly. Now, I do want to mention Ben does have a couple of copies, two Temporal Trespass and two Galvanic Iteration. Now, if maybe we can have enough, turbo milling early, excuse me, with something like Pieces of the Puzzle can help find that combo. That's maybe an avenue to victory, but even then, that stuff takes at least till turn 5 to set up, because assuming a perfect draw, you can turn 5, 3 mana for Trespass, 2 mana for Iteration. But yeah, I mean, it's just going to be really, really tough here for Ben. We see a little bit of developing here. Even a Boseiju on the Hall of Storm Giants. Fletcher's just like, yeah, I don't know. This is far enough away, but get it out of here. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, that time stretch sequence of iteration into trespass that can steal the game, but even that is starting on turn 5 at the very earliest, and a lot of these games aren't even going to make it to turn 5. So again, a fairly remote hope from the Phoenix side, and Hall of Storm Giants, this is actually kind of a heads up play in that if you're taking those extra turns, this is a pretty good clock on those extra turns. So just getting that possibility out of the way to cut that off even further.
Yeah, we gotta consider here for Ben dumping a land. Really wants that. I mean, like we said, this matchup is really, really tough for Ben. But one of Ben's best chances is maybe having a couple of early Phoenixes. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case here. Excuse me. Couple looks like a fiery impulse in Ben's hand. That's probably not going to find any targets, at least this game. And I see a pieces. I think a sleight of hand, maybe a cruise. I see that that might be a trespass in hand for Ben if I'm looking correctly. So again, as we talked about, maybe that's an avenue to victory, but it's just so far away, and it's going to be really hard to get enough pressure onto the battlefield to even be able to set up lethal in those additional turns that you take. You could take 3 turns in a row, but you actually need some stuff in play to be able to kill them on those extra turns.
Yeah, and that one spell pierce has shown up, but it is a known quantity now. Fletcher knows that he has to play around that. If Ben can even afford to hold it open, often if you're returning those Phoenixes, it's going to involve a sequence that uses up all of your mana. So even some trade-offs involved there. We see Jwari Ruins being played as a tap land. So yeah, I guess our theory that now know that this is an uphill battle, if you like, for Ben. And she holds down on this turn. So we'll see if Fletcher has what he needs right now. He doesn't, but again, he doesn't need to. He's under no pressure at this point.
All right, Dom. Usually Mason is my go-to guy for all the alt arts. I'm guessing that's a Thespian stage, because looking at Fletcher's mana base, I don't really see what else that would be. I've just never seen that alternate art before.
Yeah, he's got the alt art Lotus Field as well under there, just really keeping what it is, looking to set up for making a second Lotus Field. And at that point, he basically will have all the resources he needs. Maybe looking to set up, hidden strings to kick things off, going through Spell Pierce. And the other thing to think about too is Galvanic Iteration copying Spell Pierce. That could actually be a relevant threshold that might be tough to break through. But again, that's another reactive line that's going to force him to pass with 3 mana open. So Bender's going to fire off a natural trespass here. So just 3 mana, take an extra turn. Pretty good turn. It looks like we're just kind of spinning our tires for the time being.
Yeah, the basically a 3 mana explore here Funny enough, Ben cast the Temporal Trespass and then immediately draws the Galvanic Iteration. So, a little. I don't remember if he had the Galvanic in hand. I don't think he did. But in any case, the Galvanic Iteration now in hand. Unfortunately, that for Ben, that Trespass already been cast, so not going to be able to convert that into an additional extra turn. We're going to go ahead and play Jwari Ruins and pass the turn. But as you mentioned, Galvanic Iteration Spell Pierce, that could maybe do something because even though Fletcher knows about the Spell Pierce, maybe doesn't necessarily know about the Galvanic Iteration.
And he might assume if Ben had the iteration already, he would have held it to pair with that trespass. So maybe there's some kind of concealed thing here where if Fletcher thinks that coast is clear and he plays into it and then Ben has it like that, that might be the hope here, is for that very unlikely blowout to materialize. And that might be Ben's only realistic shot. But the mana counters are coming out. We are off to the races, cycling Vizier of Tumbling Sands. Going to net a mana there off Lotus Field. Going to be able to do that again and again. Two more Viziers in hand there. So even if Ben has that rolled up, I think we're going to have enough mana to just power straight on through it.
Yeah, and even if Ben is able to convert Galvanic plus Spell Pierce, what's Fletcher going to say? Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to pass the turn. It's not like Fletcher's at 20. There's no pressure in play. So even if Galvanic Spell Pierce is able to do anything this turn, it's not clear that Ben can even convert that into anything meaningful either way.
Hidden Strings is going to be +4 mana here. So yeah, even Galv plus Pierce won't be enough. If Ben could Galv and Flashback and Pierce, I think even that would be too little, and he doesn't even have enough mana for that. So yeah, but Ben is a helpless onlooker at this stage.
Absolutely, just kind
It
of
seems.
watching Fletcher to see how much mana we can produce here. Second stage being played. That's a Behold the Beyond. Going to go ahead and has plenty of mana left over to even pay for the double spell pierce. We have the Lotus Field and the Thespian stage copy untapped, so has at least 6 mana left over to be able to pay for the potential double spell pierce. And guessing this is going to be converted into a win. Yeah, Fletcher's going to go ahead and go through the motions here. I mean, again, just making sure that we can pay for the spell pierce iteration because that maybe that is something that is on Fletcher's mind. But yeah, just gonna go through the deck, pick up a couple of cards, put them into the hand, maybe do them face up, maybe not.
Yeah, but Behold is one of those weird cards which you would never normally play, but because of Emotion Ultimatum, you have a bunch of these one-offs for the various ultimatum piles, and sometimes you don't draw the ultimatum, but you do just draw those cards instead, and have to make do with those. Turns out, in a spot like this, getting to directly.
Absolutely. So Fletcher's going to go ahead and pick up a couple of cards here, likely going for, I would imagine, something along the lines of like Emergent Ultimatum, maybe a Hidden Strings, maybe a Dark Petition, potentially something along those lines. Going to go ahead. You can float 6 mana strings, 4 floating, 4, 7. That can be, I believe, an ultimatum with 6 still available, which is more than enough to pay for those double spell pierces. And we'll have to see Fletcher go through the motions here. There's that hidden string is going to untap the 2 Lotus Fields. That would be 4 floating, 3 mana. Yeah, 3 mana hidden or 3 mana ultimatum. Actually, the other stage is not quite a Lotus Field, so this is ultimatum. But funny enough, still has access to 4 mana, so can still go ahead and pay for that double spell pierce. Now, is this the opportunity where Ben wants to fire it off? That's the question, or do you want to maybe wait a little bit longer?
Yeah, there are some weird spots where some of the ultimatum piles, depending on what you give them back, need them to have at least 1 mana floating left over. But I think given that if you go for this, Fletcher can pay, and then that informs what choices he's going to make. So I think the way you might have to do it would be to let the ultimatum resolve, and then if Fletcher isn't ready that threat enough, maybe picks the wrong combination of 3 cards, you put the right one back, and then Galvpiss the right thing, and that might actually cut off the combo chain for now, as you said, that may only be delaying the inevitable, but that might be the realistic way to survive this turn.
Yeah, it looks like I got a glimpse of the last card that Fletcher picked up. It looks like it was a Lear. So even if for some reason Fletcher is, stopped on this turn specifically with that double spell pierce, still has access to potentially, setting up Lear plus, strings into Pierce a million man. I'm just gonna do it all again next turn. And it looks like the three cards that Ben is given the option of is Dark Petition, Omniscience, and Pour Over the Pages. So this is kind of nice because both Pour and actually all three of them generate mana. Omniscience because you never have to pay mana for your spells. So no matter what cards Ben gives Fletcher here, Fletcher is going to have access to more mana to be able to pay for the double spell pierce. So Fletcher kind of, going through the motions here, figuring out what's the other card that Fletcher could have gotten off Behold. This seems deterministic, right? Because even if you put back Petition, you give Fletcher Omniscience plus Pour Over the Pages, and then I think even the Omniscience plus Lear is just enough by itself.
Yeah, in theory, if Fletcher gets Omniscience and Pour and doesn't have a relevant card left over, maybe he misses on the Pour and then just has to fizzle there. Once he has a Lear, though, that is kind of off the table. Maybe if Ben also has something like a Lightning Axe that could kill Lear, it would have to be a very specific mix of things. And then if Fletcher has enough mana, you can also do funky stuff where if you have an Odawara left over, you bounce your own Lear and recast the Lear. So sometimes these specifics get very strange. And yeah, you see Ben just. I almost admire him for continuing to play it out for this long, and he kind of has to because of what he has left over. Theoretically, he could stitch it together, but I think we're going to see Fletcher seal the deal here.
Yeah, one other thing that I find kind of interesting is Ben only has access to one red mana. So even if he had something like Lightning Axe plus Iteration Spell Pierce, he can't actually cast the Lightning Axe and the Iteration. So he would only have to choose between one of those. And I got a glimpse of Ben saying it's double Fiery Impulse. So you can't even try to fight over the Lear because we have two Fiery Impulses and no Lightning Axes. And there's the Lear. And maybe this will grant the concession from Ben potentially.
Just making the most of their time on camera. It won't be the last feature match for either of these players today or over the year, I imagine. But while you're here, may as well make the most of it.
Absolutely. Players getting a good chuckle here. So Lear is going on the stack. We got some. Okay, we're going to try to consider. So I guess Ben can try to find a Lightning Axe off of the consider potentially. Maybe that could do something. The priority is going to get passed to Fletcher. So at the bare minimum, Fletcher can play, I guess, the Pour Over the Pages. That's at the very, very least. And then, even if Ben's able to find the Lightning Axe. Looks like you were asking for an Oracle text. I'm guessing that's on the lovely full art Lear. As nice, as beautiful as the full art is, unfortunately, there's no text on it. So just wants to make sure that Ben knows what that card does, if that's what's being asked. That is a beautiful piece of artwork, though. I do like that Lear.
It is, yeah. And I believe the Beholder Beyond will still be in the graveyard too. So with enough mana, we could kick things off with that instead. That might actually run into the whole Gal of Pierce thing. But then, as you said, we're gated on red mana. So then Liv's going to live. So I think however you slice it, Fletcher's going to be fine. And then also, once Liv's in play, you can't even counter spell. So Spell Pierce will officially be doing nothing and not just be, theoretically dead.
Yeah, now that the Lear's in play, Spell Pierce no longer on the table. We're making a whole bunch of mana. Looks like we're casting that Behold the Beyond. Ben's gonna look at the hand. Is the Azorius gonna fire it off? Okay. Here's the Galvanic
Resolves.
Iteration. All right. I guess I'll choose to not pay. Yeah, that one's gonna resolve. I think I won't pay.
Good choice. Good choice.
See Fletcher looking at Ben. They're both looking at each other. All right, all right. Oh, it's funny. Ben's just like, I did have this. I did have this, even though you played around it the entire time because that's the only thing you could lose to. So, very, very heads up here from Fletcher that, like you said, that's the only relevant card realistically that Ben has in a game one situation. So there, once you know deck list and you know that there's not that much to play around, it's Magic becomes a lot easier when you have that kind of
Yeah,
information.
Ben took a lot of game actions this game, and this may be the most relevant game action that he took, and it still was literally non-functional given given the cards in play. So you see why this game one is such an uphill battle for Phoenix against Lotus, and it gets a little better post sideboard, but you still have to win often both post cyber games. So if you expect a lot of Lotus, then there might be a time to put down Phoenix, or you really have to take drastic measures with your sideboarding if you're willing to do that. And for a field like this, 16 players, how much of a deck you expect really is a consequential choice. If you think there's going to be 3 people on Lotus field, well, maybe you take those drastic measures. If you think there's 1, well, maybe you hope to dodge, and then you feel really unlucky when you get paired into them on camera here in round 2.
All right. Fletcher's going to go ahead and flash those 3 copies of Balagid Recoveries. And that, for people at home who don't know, that goes infinite with Chandra because you can down tick the Chandra a bunch, Balagid Recovery, get back the Chandra, and then basically that just loops itself to deal a bunch of damage to a Ben. So that is going to be game number 1, rather, to Fletcher Johnson. And, as we talked about in the intro, that is kind of what we expected. This is a horrendous matchup, probably the worst possible pairing for Ben. But the sideboard can maybe change some things.
Yeah, we'll go take a look over there, and we'll see an Ether Gas, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Mystical Dispute. Really, you're just looking for cards that interact with spells on the stack, and that's going to be an exhaustive list of those. And then you can maybe talk yourself into the Treasure Cruise to find those cards more often, or you're the Young Pyromancer, like that could apply a clock while letting me hold up interaction. So cards like that, and we have a lot of Fiery Impulses and so on, and Lightning Axes that we can get out of the deck in the meantime. So a lot of cards to cut. A decent number of cards to add in, but none of them are really game changers. It's just these kind of minor upgrades there. And then also one issue with the Phoenix deck trying to pivot like this is that Arclight Phoenix and reactive cards just don't go so well together. Pretty difficult to make it so that your Disable Stroke is going to be that third spell to bring back your Phoenix. So often you have to choose between pressure and disruption, and against a combo deck like this, you ideally need both at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I don't know if this is ever a consideration you would want to think, if this is ever a matchup you would want to bring in Crackling Trick against, but my theory is that maybe, like you said, it's really hard to get pressure in play, well, like enough pressure in play, meaningful, and still be able to hold up interaction. Now, granted that you have to tap out for it. The turn does cost 4 mana, so it is a big mana investment, and maybe you're just dying that turn. But it seems like one of those cards that very high risk, high reward, where if you can slam it and they don't have the counterspell that one turn, maybe you can turn the corner moving forward. But that is for Ben's sideboard. If you take a look at Fletcher's deck list, I might need a little bit of help with this one, Dom, because no, this is I believe the incorrect deck list. I don't think we're playing any blue eye control. Looks like we may have to have this switched up. But I will read you Fletcher's sideboard. We have 2 Dragonlord Dramokas, a Fading Hope, 2 Hope Tenders, 2 Narset's Reversals, a Natural State, a Path of Peril, 2 Silence, 2 Temporary Lockdown, and then the big boy, Dom, 2 Zakama Primal Calamity. What cards, if any, do you think that Fletcher wants to reach towards?
So I think the Dramokas make sense. It serves that dual purpose as it's a threat in its own right. And again, big body, flyer, lifelink, like very hard to actually attack or block through that. Going to help to stabilize the board. And then also just provides that layer of protection for the combo on your own turn. So that's a perfect tool to have. And then I think the silences and the Narset's reversals, both of those can kind of do double duty, where a silence can break up what might be like a Galv Trespass turn or a Phoenix turn, and also can be the first thing that you cast on your turn to make sure the coast is clear for your combo. And then Narset's reversal, same kind of deal, where it can let you win a counterfight on the stack, but then also sometimes you get the dopamine rush of casting Narset's reversal on a Treasure Cruise, and not very little feels better than that.
Or perhaps even on a temporal trespass. Lotus Field probably wants to
Sure.
take a couple of extra turns there. But yeah, that is the sideboards. Like we said, Fletcher definitely ahead, and Well, Ben gets a couple of small upgrades, but I think nothing too major, and we would probably assume that Fletcher is still a favorite in the postboard game. So I don't know if we have the players ready to go, but if we do, we can go ahead and get you back down to our feature match area. Looks like they're still reviewing deck list. Yeah, this is as you mentioned. If you were, like you said, picking a deck list for a 16-person field, and you say, you knew there was maybe 3 or 4 Lotus mains that like you knew 100% of the time they were going to play Lotus. Phoenix is probably a deck you wouldn't want to register. But if you kind of assume that maybe only one person is going to play Lotus, then you could say, okay, well, we'll just dodge the matchup. But yeah, I don't know. It looks like unfortunately for Ben, did not dodge the matchup enough.
Yeah, and that's where you start to profile the other players in the field. So Kyle Gonzalez, for example, drawn to these like wacky, intricate combo decks, Amulet Titan main in Modern, and that's his choice for the Modern portion again this weekend. Kind of makes sense that someone like him might pick up a deck like Lotus. Turns out he's picked up an even more wacky and obscure combo deck instead, as he is wont to do. But that's the kind of calculation that you go through. And so if you read that, maybe it's 3 Lotus field decks instead of one, with such a small field, that really does change the calculations around your own deck choice. Now, you might decide Phoenix is a deck that I know the best, that I enjoy the best, that I like the best. How well am I actually going to do if I played it more than me and they played the mirrors more or whatever? Maybe I just play Phoenix because that's my thing. And I think the format is in a place generally where you can default to the deck or the kind of deck that you know and enjoy the best. And I think that's one thing that Pioneer really has going for it as a format right now is you like the spell heavy Izzet style of decks. You've got Phoenix. Do you like Control? Well, Control is maybe the best deck. Do you like the black disruptive mid-range deck? Well, that's maybe the best deck as well, depending on who you ask. There are all these wacky combo decks and ramp decks. So there is something for everyone. And if the something for you is Phoenix, then even if you think you have reason to be scared of Lotus, I think you can talk yourself into it still. I think it's a fine choice.
Absolutely. So Fletcher going to go ahead and pick up a mulligan here. I believe looks like Fletcher's going to go ahead and keep 6 cards, and I'm pretty sure Ben is also on 7. So we see a Spire Bluff Canal here for Ben, and a bit of a Balagid Sanctuary for Fletcher Johnson. So Ben really wants to try and, as we talked about in game one, really wants to try and find an early Phoenix because if he can get some sort of early pressure in play, that makes the counter spells a lot better, where you can hold up counter spells with pressure in play. Now, if you imagine a situation where you're holding up counter spells with no pressure in play, then you're not really giving your opponent a reason to play into those counter spells, and Fletcher's just going to have a lot more time to develop and set up his mana. So really wants to try and find a fast Phoenix here for Ben.
Yeah, and one way you can choke the Lotus Field deck off its main game plan is if their route to their namesake card is through Sylvan Scrying, well, sometimes if you get to Spell Pierce that, then they just end up not really being able to do anything. You have all the time in the world. As it happens, Fletcher has, it looks like, multiple copies of Sylvan Scrying at the very least. And so even that tactic, maybe it's not going to work out. And Ben, yeah, not doing too much in the meantime. If you had, let's say, turn 2 Ledger Shredder, then that's not a fast lock right away, but it can become one over time and let you hold up your counters. As it is, Ben is having to play almost like this weird control deck that's not well suited to that.
Oof. That's a Jwari Disruption on the Sylvan Scrying, and Fletcher's like, you know what? Actually, Ben, I got the Lotus Field already. So is able to deploy that Lotus Field. This is kind of exactly how you draw it up if you're Fletcher. You don't even really mind that Sylvan Scrying gets traded for because, as you said, you have a second copy in hand and already had the Lotus Field either way. So, all no harm, no foul here for Fletcher as we see Ben going ahead and casting a Sleight of Hand. And like we said, just no pressure here. I did see a copy of Aether Gust, but there's a Phoenix in hand, which that's not really where you want that Phoenix.
And it gets harder post sideboard if you assume Ben is boarding out some of his lightning axes. It's not all that easy to get the Phoenix from your hand into the bin where maybe it belongs, right? You kind of need to have the Ledger Shredder or to discard to hand size maybe. This is one issue with Phoenix is that you don't have a lot of ways to actually shuffle cards between zones the way that you need to sometimes.
Exactly. There's no faithless looting. You know, we've seen some other formats that are Pioneer adjacent, maybe timeless. That's the one that I'm thinking of, but no faithless looting in this format. And in any case, we see a Sylvan Scrying here. Fletcher's got a couple of mana floating. We're thinking about firing off Gust, and we do. Now, the thinking there, maybe Fletcher, or excuse me, maybe Ben is deciding that he's like, okay, well, next turn I want to tap out for some sort of threat like this Phoenix and get some pressure on the battlefield. So if that's the case, maybe he wants to use the mana this turn to be able to deploy a threat. And we'll have to see how Ben wants to proceed from here.
Yeah, you saw Fletcher burn a Vizier, which is a pretty valuable piece to get enough mana to play that scrying through a potential spell pierce. And if it resolved, he could get Thespian Sage, play the Sage, and use that 2 mana left over to copy the Lotus, all in one fell swoop. And now that we've gusted the scrying, well, that mana's been wasted. The scrying is back on top. There's no land drop this turn, no Sage's turn, no copying. So that gust does actually set Fletcher back by quite a bit here.
Yeah, it's like you said, you're actually kind of traded sort of 2 for 1. I guess the Vizier replaced itself, but you were able to burn that mana and get a big use of that turn. So Benny the tank here. I wonder. Yeah, we're thinking about casting the Phoenix. Decides to go with an opt instead. Keeps it on top. I think we kept another cantrip. We're gonna go ahead and sleight of hand. Wonder what we're looking for here from Ben's side. And as you mentioned, Lightning Axe, being cut from the sideboard, I believe I got a glimpse of one in Ben's hand. So did decide to keep in at least maybe 1 or 2 copies of those, probably for the potential of Lear.
And you see silence in Fletcher's hand, kind of waiting to kick off the big turn as and when. But no pressure to do that in the short term. Ben does have Treasure Cruise, so keep cycling through cards, but yeah, no source of pressure. So just kind of more of the same for now.
Yeah, and that copy of Narset's Reversal in Fletcher's hand, that would have been a premium target for that one, as you mentioned in the during sideboarding. But unfortunately for Fletcher, doesn't have the mana available. And there's the Spell Pierce on the Sylvan Scrying. Wow, that's kind of about as good as it could have gone for Ben. Was able to convert that Spell Pierce, and I think Fletcher had the Balagid last turn, chose not to play it, and now that the Scrying got countered, he's like, okay, well now we need to develop a little bit of mana, so decides to play that Sanctuary out. And Ben taking a look at a grip. I believe there's a Phoenix, a Lightning Axe, a Disdainful Stroke, and I can't get a glimpse of anything else. I saw there may be a Temporal Trespass too. But yeah, that trespass not doing a lot here for Ben because not enough cards in the graveyard, no pressure in play. There is Hall of the Storm Giants, so if Ben can maybe find some additional mana sources, we're just going to hardcast Phoenix here and chip in for 3 points of damage. And this is kind of what we had talked about last turn. Maybe Ben wanted to deploy that, but chose to wait till this turn. And maybe if Fletcher can stumble a little bit, but I mean, ooh, Mystical Dispute on Hidden Strings. That is massive here for Ben. But again, it's there's just not enough pressure in play to be able to convert all of these counter spells into more meaningful damage.
Well, hey, we've got our Delver of Secrets of sorts. It took us a while. We had to spend a lot of mana on it, but we got there in the end.
Snare Thopter.
Sure. There's pieces for Ben trying to gas back up. Oh,
Ooh.
2 Phoenixes milled over. So now an interesting choice potentially. So there's Disdainful Stroke turned up with the pieces. That's public. So now does Ben try and chain maybe that up into another cantrip and attack for 9 this turn and present lethal next turn, taking the shields down in the process. But if you've stymied one attempt at the combo, maybe this is the window to try and close it out. Ben decides, no, I'm just going to play it safe, keep passing.
I think I might have caught a glimpse of a Mystical Dispute too. There are 2 in Ben's sideboard. There's a blue card that's somewhat unrecognizable. I can't tell if it's a Dispute or a Cruise, but Fletcher just going to pass. And if you're Ben, you have to be very, very happy with that pass because there is a somewhat decent chance that you can get 2 Phoenixes into play while still holding up permission this turn. And there is that would be a massive, massive swing here for Ben.
Yeah, it's why the printing of Sleight of Hand, this pretty innocuous card, was such a big deal, where it makes it so easy to just chain these cantrips together over and over at minimal cost and just have these big turns for very little mana. It looks like we might not have that third cantrip ready to go, though. So we might be forced into the same choice that we had the previous turn.
Well, we got a lightning axe, Dom. We could
we,
lightning axe our own
okay,
Phoenix,
okay.
so it's gonna come back anyways, right? Oh,
Oh, and
time
there's
block.
stress. But Fletcher has Narset's Reversal.
Ooh, okay. Now, like I said, I think I might have seen a dispute in Ben's hand, but I don't know 100%. There is the dispute,
Yeah.
and it looks like Fletcher cannot fight. That is going to be game number 2. Wow,
Wow.
very, very
Okay.
well done here for Ben.
Yeah, and it was an odd game, but that's the kind of game often the Phoenix has to win. Um, and one thing that was really awkward for Fletcher was you saw that silence in the hand, ready to kick off the combo turn, but the way that his mana development lined up, and Ben was able to curtail it well with those spell pierces and so on, was that where's the white mana coming from? You know, we've got a Lotus Field here, and we've got a random mono green land here, but we need the Lotus Field for blue to cast our spells, to be untapping the Lotus Field, and so on. So there's never a window to work in the silence that would protect everything else. So that is an issue with, like, in theory, Lotus Field can cast anything you like, from Zakama to Thought Distortion to whatever, but you have to get there first, and if you stop them getting there, then their hand looks pretty mopey.
Yeah, I mean, Fletcher had 4 mana and had silence into Narset's Reversal, but as you said, that Lotus Field can only produce white or blue, so just not able to go, if assuming that you had 4 City of Brasses in play, you could just go silence first and then Narset's Reversal. But because the mana was in the situation that it was, not able to do that there for Fletcher. But yeah, that game was very, very, I guess I would want to say that it went as you would want it to for Ben, but there was no, early pressure, but was able to just kind of keep Fletcher off of the mana generation long enough, was able to tap out for a Phoenix. And then once that one turn where you untapped and was able to like have the double disdainful stroke up, that was kind of the turning point there for Ben. And we'll have to see if Ben can go ahead and do that in game number 3.
Yeah, there's no nut draw really that you're looking for from the Phoenix side, where you goldfish a turn 4 kill or anything like that. You kind of have to work for all of the wins in exactly that way, but a win's a win, and as long as you get there, it might feel closer than you would like, or it might seem a bit scrappy, but it's a plan, and Ben was able to execute it. That said, on the play, I think if Vierno has a non-functional hand, as long as he has those initial setup pieces, then I saw like
Yeah, looks like Fletcher's hand, multiple copies of Chandra Hope's Beacon. Can't quite get a good look of the rest of Fletcher's hand, but looks like we're keeping. We're keeping double Chandra. I'm guessing the rest of the hand is probably just some combination of Lotus Field, couple of lands, Sylvan Scrying, or something like that. But interesting to see 2 Chandras in the opener here.
yeah, Chandra has become the go-to win condition for these Lotus decks, where you have the elaborate loop that you outlined in game one of you're bouncing your own Chandra, you're Balaged recovering back another Balaged recovery and your Chandra, and you can do all of that. But it turns out that sometimes you just cast Chandra when you draw it off your Lotus Field, and you can ramp it out with these untap effects, and you just have a Chandra in play turn 3, turn 4. That's a pretty intimidating card. Controlling the board is digging you for the pieces that you're missing, and then once you are ready to go, copying your hidden strings, copying your pour over the page. That gives you all the gas, all the mana you need to get across the finish line. So it's always nice when these combo decks have a win condition, which is good as a win condition, but it can also be so much more. You know, it doesn't have to be some 12 mana thing that only wins the game once you're ready.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of self-fulfilling in the way of like it finds you into more of the combo where you can hit like a pour of the pages. If you have one Lotus Field in play, you hit pour, copy it with Chandra. That's essentially the same thing as casting a pour with 2 fields in play, but you get to draw an additional 3 cards. And then, like you said, it can be removal spells for problematic creatures like Shieldred. Just kind of does everything while also being the primary win condition. So, yeah, very, very good new addition for this deck that was relatively recent. That was from 2023. So, nice to see some new cards picking up here. But we are on the play here for Fletcher. It's leading us off with a Temple. It's going to go right to the bottom, and Ben has an island and a passing. Could be a cantrip here. Looks like it's not. Second land here for Fletcher, and going to start us off with a sleight of hand.
So the question for Fletcher, which looking at his hand as he fans it out, trying to see does he have a route to that Lotus field yet? And maybe there's one lurking towards the back, but
Yeah, I think it's one of those promo ones, I believe.
okay, okay.
Yeah, and we have a Vizier too, so we can even float 2 mana, sack the 2 mana, cycle Vizier, untap the Lotus Field. That'll give us some mana on or excuse me, rather on Ben's turn if you want to utilize that mana. And Fletcher really looking for a Thespian Stage. That's one card I couldn't quite tell if there was. I think there might be towards the back, but it's kind of hard to see. I do see a second Lotus Field. Don't really want that one. Balagid, silence a couple of Chandras. So Fletcher's hand, without if there is no second stage, Fletcher's hand it doesn't seem that great here.
Yeah, there might be some temptation to Balaged back either a land or the Vizier itself, or just try and keep the cards flowing because if we can just build towards double Lotus Field, we've got some good payoffs for that. But right now, that might be the major choke point here.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So Ben's going to go ahead and cast a couple of cantrips here, and looks like we are no phoenixes in the graveyard here for Ben. Couple of looks like I saw lightning axe. There's a sleight of hand. Don't know how much permission we have in Ben's hand. I would have to imagine there's at least one. There's more in the post board games. And yeah, so yeah, at least a mystical dispute. I couldn't quite get a glimpse of anything else though. And yeah, Ben, like we said, this is kind of sort of what happened in game one, where Ben just wants to hold up a little bit of small interaction the first couple of turns, kind of find one window to sneak a threat into there. When Fletcher is not threatening anything super scary, and then that one turn you get, assuming you get to untap that one turn, hold up some more counter magic, and kind of progress the game from there. But Ben currently missing that threat.
No sign of an Arclight Phoenix just yet, just more blue cards that draw more blue cards. So sleight of hand resolving here.
Keep spinning the
Another land drop from
wheels.
Ben.
Okay, there's a Botanical Sanctum here for Fletcher. Still unable to cast those Chandras. We can fire off a Pour or a Dark Petition here. In the phase of 2 open mana, do you have a preference on which one you would want to lead with here, Dom?
I mean, there is a case for just not letting Ben use his cards, but I think given that you have both the Pour and the Petition and both Chandras, there is some temptation to just kind of fight through as much stuff as Ben has, just make him have it, make him use it. And you also have the Chandra, so once you have a little mana to spare, then you can fire that off to kick things off as well. So I think I like this choice, although you you could argue that maybe leading with the petition, you let that get countered, and then if you can find any of like stage, Lotus, or whatever, then the Pour is going to be doing a little more for you, probably.
No, yeah, that definitely good points. And yeah, Fletcher's hand is just basically all heaters at this point. Couple of Chandras, the silence, the Dark Petition. And then Ben just kind of still spinning wheels, trying to find a threat. There is a young Pyromancer, almost calls it seasoned Pyromancer. That's not the right format we're playing. So we will have to see this young Pyromancer. Now, this in combination with another 1 mana counterspell is kind of the perfect turn here for Ben. Unfortunately for Ben, Fletcher looks like we found a Vizier, which means we get to float a mana, and if we find an untapped land, we can actually play the petition through a potential spell pierce. Now, that's if we choose to go for the petition over the Chandra, so we'll have to see what Fletcher decides to do here.
Yeah. Also, you're drawing hidden strings, drawing. There are lots of draws which would also let him go for a big turn protected by the silence here up front.
Ooh,
And it turns out we can just cast Remoka instead. You
that one's pretty good.
can't mystical dispute that one. And I guess he can't either gust it, but then you know where it's going, and it's just gonna come right back again next turn. I guess right now, if Ben doesn't have or if Fletcher doesn't have another land, then it's actually somewhat awkward if the Dromoka goes back on top. But Fletcher really putting Ben to the test here. And if Ben doesn't have the gust this turn, then I think it's lights out.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you're going to get to untap, resolve the dark petition, and just kind of snowball from there. Now, there is a lightning axe in hand. Maybe Ben does a little cheeky attack with young pyromancer. Ah, do
Okay,
you want to
okay.
block Fletcher?
Now, I would like it more if he didn't have the lightning axe, just, knowing what the deal is, just sending it on in. But I like this too.
Yeah. We see a Hall of Storm Giants here, and yeah, I mean Ben's hand is what I think two spell pier or spell pierce, stroke, lightning axe. I think so. I mean, it turns out Ben's hand not very good against an active Jermoka, and Fletcher's just going to get to go to work here.
Yeah, so here's Dark Petition. Turns out Fletcher does indeed have spell mastery, and so uh, he will be able to find, I guess, maybe just Thespian Stage would be a natural pickup.
Yeah, and then you could use the 3 black floating to use the stage to copy the Lotus field. Seems like a pretty good place to be with. Yeah, because you do have the 2 Chandras, so there is some like you kind of already have a payoff in hand, so you don't necessarily need to search for like an ultimatum or anything like that. Um, yeah, so a good chance maybe getting a stage here. And then, I mean, yeah, just like it's very, very difficult for Ben to not only obviously you can't do anything when the Dromoka's in play, but even removing the Dromoka from the battlefield is tough because, as you said, only really realistically only Aether Gust is the out. There's only one copy of Aether Gust, and also just racing that thing is kind of really really impossible. So there's just a multitude of reasons why this Dromoka is just kind of everything that Fletcher wants here.
Yeah, or my mistake. It looks like we did not actually, in fact, have spell mastery. That poor, the only spell in the bin, so would not have had floating mana. So we just get another Lotus Field instead, which mostly does the same job. Do have to sacrifice the land instead, and so we still are a little gated on mana here. It looks like.
Okay, well, we're taking an extra turn here for Ben. There is a potential that maybe Ben has multiple lightning axes in the deck and could draw towards a second copy of that. Now, you would have to lose a lot of resources to do that, considering you'd have to discard 2 cards to the axes. But looks like Ben picks up a land and it just with a fistful of counter magic, not really where he wants to be against the Stramoka.
Yeah, Galvanic Iteration as well could team up with the Lightning Axe to take down the dragon.
Yeah, I'm seeing. I think the hand is Spell Pierce, Mystical Dispute, Disdainful Stroke, Lightning Axe. None of those do anything. Ben's just, man, if it weren't for this Stramoka, my hand would be really, really good. But yeah, just really at the mercy of Fletcher's top decks and current hand. And I mean, Fletcher's hand is just all bangers at this point. I think I saw Dramoka, Ultimatum, Double Chandra. So yeah, I mean, this one feels like it's probably done. True the Behold too. So just all bangers. Weirdly enough, though, kind of is missing a little bit of mana, right? Like doesn't have the hidden strings or the vizier to really. There's maybe a line though. So we have spell mastery now, right? So we can go 6 mana, petition, floating a blue and 3 black. That's 4 strings, 2 black floating, untap, untap. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which ultimatum is 3 green, right? Okay, so we can get to ultimatum here with petition for strings, I believe.
And if all else fails, just casting Chandra, killing young Pyromancer, really going to cut Ben's pressure out from underneath him too.
And there's that Chandra. Chandra going to go ahead and very likely just, like as you said, take care of that. The Pyromancer and the token. Yeah, Fletcher's really in a position where maybe he doesn't have to do any of that stuff. He's just winning with Chandra and Traboka. That's probably good enough to just win the game. We've kind of transformed into this weirdo ramp mid range deck, I guess, as it were. Where yeah, just Dramoka beatdowns. Oh, we're even going upstairs. Who cares about that token? There's a pieces here for Ben. Pieces
I guess one danger
into
now is that the token, if there's a Phoenix. Okay, there's Galf. So Galv plus Lightning Axe can take down Dromoka. If there was a Phoenix, then that plus a token could finish off the Chandra. Looks like that Phoenix may be missing from that equation. But the crucial first step of just get that Dromoka out of there, we've I guess we accomplished that, but then Chandra gets uptick and copy petition or copy something else, and it doesn't look good.
Right. And also the fact that Ben's going to have to go shields down this turn. We needed this a little bit earlier to be able to kill the Dramoka and still have available counter magic. But now, because we're going to be tapped out, we no longer have that counter magic available. So, there's just a whole mess of problems here for Fletcher. We're going to get to copy Dark Petition, so we can float blue and 6 black, and it's all downhill here for Ben Ungar. I would assume this is lethal. Would have to guess.
Yeah, I'm no Set, but if I can do my math here, this looks pretty lethal to me. And one of the charms of the Lotus Field deck is you look at Fletcher's hand, it's so strange, right? It's cards of all of these different colors, cards which don't seem castable necessarily, even with those colors, and then these like combo pieces which don't appear in any other combo deck, but they all like fit together here in exactly the right way. It's an odd deck, but it's depending on who you ask, it's a very charming one. The charm may be lost on Ben Ungar here, though, as he loses game 3 here, is going to fall to 0-2 in our tournament. But the way this is set up, it's not a deck. You try and keep it together mentally, but you already are feeling the pain. Here, though, you can bounce right back, and we've seen so many of these big events where someone really starts off in the hole, but then they rally back, and having the mental fortitude to do that is what separates those people from the rest of the pack. So we'll see if Ben can come on there. In the meantime, we're going to show you our leaderboard, showing you the people who made it here through either spiking one event over the year or through a long grind over the course of all of our tournaments here on the series. So Derek Davis, one of our favorites, had a great year in his own right, both on this circuit and also elsewhere, starting off 1-0. Defending champion Roger Suleiman at 1-0. Kyle Gonzalez 1-0. Johnny Hobbs 1-0. Dan Weiser, many people's favorite to win the entire event. World champion in several card games, plural, other than Magic. He is 1-0 as well. And then, a suite of 0-1s to balance all of that out as well.
Yep. So we actually have, I believe we're going to our backup feature match live. So we get some live action here. Matthew Hoey and Raja Suleiman. And the reason that we've picked this as our backup feature match is because it is the blue-eye controlled mirror. And to the surprise of likely nobody, this is still in game 1. But yeah, 2 amazing players here.
Yeah, so maybe go get a beverage right now. Get a nice groove in your seat going. This is going to be a long one.
Two of our better players here, Matthew Hoyt and Raja Suleiman, both deciding to pick up Azorius Control. They do both have the Yorion. That was the most played deck in the Pioneer seat, or the Pioneer format rather. Blue-white Yorion, Azorius Control. And kind of as we talked about in the intro, not too surprising. The meta seems pretty relatively favorable towards Azorius. And Azorius is one of those decks where if you know what specific decks you are targeting, because this being such a small field, it seems there's a lot. It seems like it's a lot easier to kind of tune the list and very specific card choices towards that expected metagame.
And the nice thing about the control tools in Pioneer these days is they're just generally good. It's kind of hard to get caught with the wrong answers against the wrong people because a lot of the tools are just really flexible. Your opponent's going to have something that falls into temporary lockdown or get lost, really big new addition, right? That is not totally universal, but it basically answers everything that you care about in some form. And so, yeah, you can really keep up with the flexible tools, and then you have some of the best control finishers and card draw spells and so on of all time to seal the deal. And you mentioned Yorion. I think that's the real big deal that helps these control decks keep up against Rakdos, where traditionally the Rakdos decks could outgrind you and could also sometimes outpressure you. But when you have this 8th card, which is really big, and then also will then draw all of these other cards, that's going to put you pretty far ahead. So in any kind of grindy matchup, if you like, and you can count this in there too, that crucial eighth card really goes a long way.
Yeah, I would definitely classify this as a grindy matchup. And just as far as looking at like maybe some subtle differences. So Matthew Hoey's deck list, there's 4 Teferi, 4 Emperor as far as like actual threats are concerned, alongside 4 Shark Typhoon, and then in the creature base, we have 3 Anchorage, and I think there is 1 Hall of Storm Giants, and then 2 Castle Ardenvale. As far as Raj is concerned, only 2 Hero of Dominaria, replacing those with 2 main deck Dream Trawlers, probably a little more prepared for the more aggressive decks. Only 3 Shark Typhoon, and then as far as the mana base is concerned, 4 Restless Anchorage and 1 Hall of Storm Giants, only 1 Castle Ardenvale. So just to kind of give you an idea of what the sort of win conditions that these players are working with. But as far as the current board state, it seems like Raja appears to have to be in the driver's seat, although Matt still has quite a few cards in hand. So you can never really tell with these blue-white control mirrors.
Yeah, and you'll reach a spot where both players have full hands of 7, and half of those are dead removal spells or sweepers. So always hard to tell how many of those do actually matter. But yeah, Roger ahead on board right now. There's a lot of time for that to change, even here in game one, though. One thing that really jumped out at me from what you said is just listing all of the various like utility lands that these decks have, where you have all of these different creature land options. You've got those channel lands. You've got Field of Ruin. These decks get so much mileage out of their mana base, where even if you're flooding out, you might have 2 or 3 lands that are effectively spells to mitigate that. So that's a really nice recipe for any kind of control deck going long, where you just always have stuff to do with your mana, and you're going to see that on display in these kind of protracted control slugfest here as well.
Yeah, somebody in chat pointing out that there's a half of an island in one of Raja's lands. That's actually a sunken citadel. Raja is sporting 2 copies of that to pair alongside all of these utility lands that we mentioned. So Citadel giving Raja a bit of a boost of mana to be able to use the Field of Ruins, the castles, and the creature lands. And that is why there it looks like it looks like there's like half of a card inside of a card. So that was maybe a little confusing there. But yeah, I mean, just Raja, it looks like was able to slam it to Fairy. Take kind of advantage of that. Picked up the Orion that turn, and we'll see what Matthew can do to sort of answer this board. One thing that we definitely have to bring up is the clock. I don't know if we can get an idea from our broadcast or if we can figure out how much time is left in this particular round, but there is a very high likelihood that this match is not going to conclude before the clock finishes.
Yeah, you not only have to win with the cards in your deck, you also have to win quickly, because you got to finish the match. And even if you think you have the perfect sideboard for the control mirror, well, are you going to have time to win 2 games with the control mirror post board on top of? Now, once we get to the elimination rounds and it's untimed, then maybe it's a different conversation. But that is a very real issue. And how many tournaments have you been at, Devin, where the round's going over time and the last match standing is 2 control players who do not seem to have a sense of urgency about the proceedings?
Every single time, without fail. And honestly, because Blue White had such a good showing in Atlanta, a lot of those rounds did go to time as well. Just got a note from production. It looks like we're about 35 minutes into the round. I believe we have 55-minute rounds because I think there's they added a little bit extra towards the round clock. So if you kind of think of that, should be roughly about 30 minutes left into the round. But halfway in. It looks like we're waiting on a judge call here. Not sure what that is about, but we will get you updated as soon as we find some information. Yeah, Matthew looks like going to the judge. But yeah, 30 minutes. So 35 minutes to not even begin to, well, no, maybe not begin to finish, but 35 minutes. This game is still not over. And maybe we can take a look at some power rankings. I saw a little bit of that on production. It looks like maybe we can get you those up on the screen because I know people love, love, love tier lists.
Yeah, and often the people who are not in the event love them even more than the people playing in them. But it's as long as it all remains lighthearted, I think it's a great way to get the competitors energized, get the viewers energized, and nothing fires you up more than if you think you've been disrespected on a tier list. You want to prove those people wrong. And if the prize pool, the Pro Tour invite, and the title, the trophy, if those weren't all enough motivation for you, sometimes spite is the ultimate motivator you need.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it looks like production has told me that we cannot get those power rankings up. But what we do have for you is potentially the leaderboard. Maybe we can take a look and see who's been winning the first couple of rounds to kind of give you an idea. Looks like we have one round in the books. Derek Davis, Steven Dykman, Fletcher Johnson, Kyle Gonzalez, Johnny Hobbs, Daniel Weiser, Raja Solomon, and Matthew Weiss are our victorious players in the first round. Yeah, we get to see Kyle a little bit on camera with that awesome Quintorius deck. Steven Dykman putting on an impressive performance against Theo Jung. But yeah, this is I'm very, very excited to see how Kyle does with this Quintorius deck. I don't know if we can dodge control all day, but if the matchups get right, maybe Kyle can make a bit of a run here in Pioneer.
Yeah, and Matt Hurry, I think one of the other favorites coming into this tournament for the people in the know. 0-1 here, and really is going to have to work to not be 0-2. Long, tough control mirror against one of the more seasoned control mages in the field, looking to be behind in game one, and winning the other two games in the time allotted is going to be a struggle. So he might end up being that same spot that Ben Ungar is in, right? Of you start 0-2, really rough start, but there's a lot of room to rebound. You've got two other formats to do that in, so maybe there's a kind of a clean slate there, if you like. So you can take some losses and then still get a good finish in the end, and you just got to have the stamina and the endurance to turn it around.
All right, so it looks like our judge call has been resolved. Not entirely sure what that was about, but we are back here. Don't worry, you didn't miss a lot. And Raja is going to go ahead and cast a Dream Trawler here. And that's a creature that attacks. Maybe we can actually complete the first game of the match. Although I'm still taking the under on that one, Dom.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the kind of card which this is not the matchup it's for, right? And usually you land this, the game is firmly within your reach. This matchup, well, I've got some Supreme Verdicts in my deck, so I guess I finally found a use for those. And if it's exactly Supreme Verdict, they can't even fight over that if they want to. So would bet against even this Hexproof Dream Trawler going the distance, but never say never, I suppose.
And we're going to fight over with an Absorb. Matthew does not want that to hit the battlefield. So see if Raja has a response as well. Player's going to just look through graveyards to see what answers are gone and what answers are still left in the deck. And yeah, just kind of, I don't know, not a ton to say. Just Dream Trawler, see if it gets countered. It does. So Absorb is going to resolve. Now, notably, we mentioned the creature lands being a big part of this. Looks like Raja currently has a Hall and a Restless Anchorage, and Matthew does have a Field of Ruin, so able to answer at least one of those. And I don't think there's any utility. Oh, there's a Castle Vantress here for Matthew Hoey, so maybe you can start getting towards that as well. But looks like Raja's tapping a lot of mana here.
Yeah, worth noting that if these life totals are accurate, both players in the single digits, so it could only take a Shock Typhoon being cycled out of nowhere, or a Wandering Emperor, or one attack that gets through from a manland to really kind of steal the game out of nowhere on either side. So life totals are a weird amount of pressure for a control matchup where you would think that's never going to be an issue.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. We came into this game a little bit late. I'm wondering how they got so low. Maybe a couple of creature land versus creature land attacks could have maybe helped that. We did see Raja come in when we came in. There was a couple of Shark Typhoon tokens, so it looks like maybe those put a little bit of work on Matthew's life total before they got cleaned up with that verdict. So that could have caused that. Maybe a similar thing for Matthew here. See two Deluges exiled with Raja. That card has very, very powerful when you can sort of have the time to cast it and flash it back. Just provides you a ton of card selection, ton of card advantage, and yeah, see what Raj is going towards here. I think we're trying to cast the Yorion. Looks like that has hit the stack.
The big bird. Yeah, and you see Hoey Scobby just kind of tucked away there at the top of the screen. I assume just has never actually had time to pick that one up and attempt it yet, but maybe that's, in exile and just kind of watching from the sidelines. But Yorion is in, which means Omen of the Sea is back in. And now Omen of the Sea again here from Hoey on the other side.
Yeah, I
And
wonder
all the
if
meanwhile, that Teferi is ticking up, and we're only 2 turns away from a potential ultimate, at which point it's going to be very, very difficult for Hoey to win after that point.
Yeah, that's probably the real win condition here for Raja. You mentioned life totals with Matthew being at 7. That's 2 hits from that Yorion, but has plenty of ways to kind of stop that hand of verdict and get lost and Teferi. Multiple ways to answer that Yorion. So Matthew does really need to put the pressure on in terms of getting that Teferi off of the battlefield, because that ultimate is likely going to spell the end of the maybe not the end of the game immediately, but inevitably it will be the end of the game here for Raja. And Matthew does have Get Lost plus Dovin's Veto, so that would be a reasonable way to kind of get this Teferi off the battlefield, but maybe he wants to see if his own Teferi resolves first, could go for a Supreme Verdict on the Yorion. Have to see what Matthew wants to do from here. We did mention the clock being a very, very big factor here, and it does not seem like these players are super cognizant of the clock. I mean, there is still, like we said, roughly or probably around 25 to 30 minutes left, which is you would think is a lot of time, but not a lot of time if you're going to lose this game. Like if you are behind enough that you're probably going to lose this game and have to win 2 post board games, like it seems like game 1 is probably the most important of the 3 for sure.
Yeah, and that's the squeeze that you sign up for here is you really want to win game 1, but then if you're playing at blitz speed to make sure that happens and give you enough time left, then you might make some crucial error that throws the game on, and now suddenly uh, you have basically no shot. So yeah, I think both players trying to be fast but also be considerate of the time. And sometimes the post board games, you board in some creature that's a win condition, or you don't get saddled with all of these dead sweepers and so on. So those games can be faster and back and forth, but you don't want to rely on that. You don't want to have to warp the pacing of the game in terms of who starts the fight when, just to try and finish the round on time. So yeah, definitely a looming factor just hanging over every turn of this game.
Yeah, so it looks like we are going to go to Fairy, tuck the opposing to Fairy for Matthew, and lining up 4 mana. I'm guessing Verdict. Yep, so Verdict clears the Yorion. And the interesting part about this is you'll notice Matthew only has 3 mana available with that Field of Ruin, and Raja, as we mentioned, has 2 creature lands. There is a Hall and a Restless Anchorage. So if Raja wants to, we can fire up both creature lands, send them both at Teferi, and guarantee that this Teferi gets off the battlefield. I guess the one worry for Raja is if there's a March, you can go Field of Ruin, Field of Ruin, the Hall of Storm Giants, and then march the Anchorage. So maybe that's something that Raja wants to consider.
The other thing as well is, uh, let's see, yeah, because the way that the Field of Ruin works with Ward, that you can't like double activate the Hall even if you have enough mana over that to like get the Ward trigger. So if Harry wants the field is good, but the question of timing then becomes kind of interesting. So yeah, the shields will be down, and so the question then is, does Raja then have to use all his mana to force the issue there and get the Teferi off the board, or while Hoey's tapped out, is there a window to maybe do something else, get your own Teferi back down? It's an interesting turn in a game that's lasted many, many turns at this point.
Many, 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 many turns. But we'll have to see. Raja did end step, I believe, another Omen of the Sea, so was able to, even though that the fairy was tucked below a couple cards, is able to access that Teferi this turn again because we were able to cycle through, I believe. So we're lining up 6 mana. My guess is that's probably for the Hall. All right, here's 6. Here's the Hall activation. And as we mentioned, even you have to field now, right? Okay, so Matthew is going to field now. Otherwise, that ward would catch you up. And Matthew can just get Oh, are we out of basics? Ooh, basic check for Matthew. There are 3 island, 3 planes. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 6 basics in play. So can't even represent March of Otherworldly Light. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, you can fit a lot of basics in your AD cards, but if the game is going this long and both players have field ruin, then yeah, you're going to run out at some point. And keeping track of that, again, that's key. You don't want to assume that one player has one more mana than they're going to and end up just being unable to do something as a result. So, how is Raja going to use this moment? We'll know when he
Yeah.
does.
Very, very good turn here for Raja. Was able to resolve the Teferi, use the anchorage to kill Matthew's opposing Teferi, and just plays a second anchorage, so is up on planeswalkers in play, is up on mana, is up on cards, and is up on utility lands. So this game has taken a while, but it does seem like Raja is firmly in the driver's seat at this point, and there's going to be a need to be a very wild sequence here for Matthew to get back out of this. Let's see what Matthew drew. We know about that get lost, so that can at least try to check the Teferi. And you still have that turn of get lost plus veto to guarantee that your get lost resolves, or at least make it a little bit more likely. So we're going to start with Yorion. And okay, so we're actually going to go for Yorion with get lost, or with veto backup, rather. So we can potentially win the fight over this Yorion, but it's not clear that Raja cares that much because you have, again, the Teferi to tuck it, you have Anchorage to even chump block it to protect your Teferi, or I guess in this case, protect your life total. That's maybe the one thing that Matthew has going is that Yorion is lethal, but I find it hard to believe that Raja can't answer this Yorion. And if Raja finds a Field of Ruin, it's now a strip mine. That's got to be some value.
Looking at these two decks, there's a lot of room for customization. You have all these control tools and you have a lot of slots to fill. And so Hoey's deck it looks like a pretty conventional blue-white Yorion deck. I think if you lined it up against Dan Weiser's or some of the others, it would be more similar than different. And then Raja, as he's wont to do, kind of is doing his own thing. You see a lot of cards which I don't think anyone other than Raja has played in a hot minute. So like Void Chatter, for example, as his 3-mana cannon spell of choice. A lot of choices which have their own reasoning behind them, but which you're not going to be expecting to see most of the time when you look at these lists.
Right, exactly. So we are going to go play land, go for the get lost on Teferi. There's a change to the equation, but Matthew does have the veto to fight over that. So we'll have to see how we want to go ahead um, and go about that. Matthew, thinking about this, can't imagine a spot where you wouldn't veto this because you kind of need this Teferi off the battlefield. We're just making sure Matthew's going through all of the motions here, thinking about all the potential and possible lines. And all right, well, I guess I'm wrong. Matthew is going to let the get lost resolve, holding that veto for something. I'm not quite sure what we're holding it for. That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, the veto is really premium card in the mirror where it counters anything, no questions asked, at least in game one, and they can't even veto your veto back, right? Like as a defensive tool, it is unmatched in that sense. And so you really need to pick your spots for that one carefully. And it might be tempting to try and use it to defend something in particular, but you really don't want to unless you absolutely have to. And it's a sign of weakness that then the opponent will read something into.
Yeah, I guess maybe the worry is that Raja has another 2-mana counterspell, and you're basically you're losing your veto for nothing. So yeah, that could kind of make sense. And when you say it like that, it does make a little bit more sense. So Raja picking up 4 mana. We're gonna verdict away the Yorion. And is it beatdown time? I hope it's beatdown time. It'd be funny if Raja only activated one of them. Oh, we're mapping onto the anchorage. Looks like I think that's the top card has changed the equation. Yeah, so Raja going to see if you want to keep
Yeah.
that.
Can even sacrifice your Omen to set up your Explore, just rig the deck in advance.
Yeah, I know we had an update earlier, but I'm curious to see if we can get an update from production as to how much time is left in the round. My guess is somewhere around 20 minutes because I think when we last got the update, there was around 30 or 32. So we'll have to see because time is definitely a factor. As you know, if Raja does win this game, as you said, Matthew has to win 2 sideboard games in probably under 20 minutes. Oh, never mind. There's only 2 minutes left. That's a lot less than 20, Dom, huh?
It's a classic 1-0 victory is in the cards, or at least I hope so. I hope this game reaches some conclusion one way or the other.
Ooh, maybe it's the 0-0-1 draw.
Which I guess is interesting for the purposes of like pod advancement and so on, where if no draw, so it looks like it's turned, and then sudden death, life hurdles actually will be the key difference maker if it comes to that. Which again, we all are hoping and praying that it won't, but we are trending in that direction, perhaps.
I don't know. I kind of like to see some sudden death, if I'm being honest with you. It's good content for the folks at home. But it does kind of seem like Raja is probably going to win this game, although there's a march here for one of the creature lands, one of the anchorages, and Matthew does have the Field of Ruin. So, okay, that got countered though. So there are still 2 anchorages, and it looks like I think dual land, a veto, and a Hall of Storm Giants in Matthew's hand, or is that another Field of Ruin? I think Matthew might have picked up a second field, so we can actually field both of the anchorages. Okay, Tom, this game's not over yet.
Okay. Well, okay, but Matthew Hurry is at 2 to Raja's 4, so Raja still has the ultimate advantage if it comes to it.
Yeah. Yeah, Matthew does have the Hall of Storm Giants in hand. So if Raja can't find a Field of Ruin or some sort of answer to Matthew's Hall, Matthew can double field the 2 anchorages this turn, set up to play the Hall next turn, and then, and again, you're giving Raja a lot of looks, especially because there are 2 Omen of the Seas along with that Teferi just finding cards. So it is pretty unlikely that Raja does not find an answer at some point. But I mean, it's definitely a possibility, and for that we go into sudden death here because 2 minutes left. Okay, there's the turn counter at the bottom. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, we're going to 5 turns, and then after 5 turns, sudden death.
I do love that when you're first learning Magic or someone is who's winning, well, who has more life, right? Like that's the most obvious metric. And once you really learn the game, you learn it's a lot more complicated than that. But it turns out once sudden death is involved, order is restored. It really comes back to the most simple, intuitive metric possible, just who has more life. And it turns out that is all important in the end.
Absolutely. So now that we're in turns, players going to be definitely thinking a little bit more, potentially more about their choices and decisions here, because now that we're no longer we're past the point of timed round, so we're Raja's going to go ahead and tick up the Teferi. And interesting, we're just going to pass. We're not going to play into the Field of Ruins. So I think Raja's thinking maybe he knows because Raja's at 4 and Matthew's at 2, he knows that that's his path to victory. And because the anchorages are both covered by the fields, maybe he doesn't have to fire them up and force the field activations. So Raja maybe just his plan here is to just kind of sit here and wait a little bit and have the anchorages as chump blockers on a turn where Matthew is able to find a lethal threat and kind of maybe make Matthew use more mana on that turn than he would want to.
This is the kind of nonsense which makes you want to have some kind of Hullbreaker horror or some kind of weird mirror breaker for these game ones, where I don't know if it's right to have that. Maybe it's training wheels, but when you get into spots like this, you really wish you could just get any kind of escape from it. And uh, I think I mean I did not have sudden death on my bingo card, but it is looking scarily realistic here.
Yeah, that's so we got turn one. There's the Hall of Storm Giants here from Matthew. And yeah, it is has the double field of ruin to cover the anchorages, as we said. Looks like Raja's picking up some mana here. Potentially going for, I don't know, Emperor or something. Maybe he wants to wait a turn, see if we can find a counter spell. Okay, we're going to crack Omen. See if we can go ahead and find here. Couldn't get a good look at what was on top. Well, we got the head nod from Raja. He likes one of those cards. This is going to be, Tom, this is going to be really, really tense as we get to these last couple of turns. I have a feeling we're going to see some sudden death here, and I am all for it. So it looks like Hoey is going to fire off the Field of Ruin to shuffle
I feel
the
like
deck.
sudden death is okay. And it does look like all of the threats that are on the radar at the moment will kind of cancel each other out in this time frame.
Yeah, and I believe Raja also has a March to be able to answer Matthew's Hall. So if Hoey just kind of fires it off and goes for it, but we saved that veto, right? I don't believe Matthew ever cast that veto.
There's a card just hanging out there, chilling on the edge of the mat.
Yeah, we had a veto from a long time ago. Maybe this is what Hoey was saving it for. He knew that the game was going to come down to 5 turns and sudden death, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to save this veto for the last turn of sudden death to be able to kill you with this Hall of Storm Giants that I'm going to top deck in 3 turns. Maybe just Matthew just planning it out perfectly in the future. Okay, so I think we are on the end of Raja's turn. I think. Yeah, because Hoey still isn't untapped. So we're going to fire off the other field, clearing that last anchorage. So no more creature lands in sight for Raja. And Hoey still does have that Hall of the Storm Giants. So that is a potential avenue. Now we'll have to see if Hoey wants to go for it. Uh, Probably assumes that it's not good enough. But, again, does have that veto to potentially protect over it. But if Raja has something like an Otawara, that one can't be vetoed. It's going to be a weird
Although
couple of turns.
Odawara, yeah, I mean the wording does, yeah. I feel like sudden death as a novelty once every 5 tournaments or so is the spice of life. If it's happening any more often than that, then we got to have some some serious questions.
All right, here it is. Matthew does fire up the Hall of the Storm Giants. Now, we know, I believe, I'm fairly certain Raja has the Otawara, so we know that it's not good enough. But Matthew, or Hoey, does not know that. So we're going to lead with March. That's going to get vetoed. Okay, veto resolves. Now what? Second March.
Okay.
And that's it. Hoey's going to pick up all of his cards. I believe, knows that he doesn't have any outs anymore. We didn't need to go to sudden death. There you go. Raja Solomon 1-0 over Matthew Hoey in our Azorius control mirror match. Whoa, Dom, that was something. All right.
It was a magic that happened. Yes. So we are going to take a quick and much needed break, and then we will be back with you for probably some more snappy magic here for round 3, different format. Same old team, same old NRG champs. We'll see you before long. Don't go anywhere.